Afternoon, everybody. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. First, I would like to make some requests on behalf of the organizing committee. Make sure your microphone is always on mute and we are not allowing you to ask any questions during the presentation. If you have any question, you can directly share them on the chat box. Our lecturer will try to answer all these questions during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And also there will be a special kind of an interesting demonstration at the end of the Q&A session. So please be with us until the end of the presentation. Moving to the most important component, I would like to welcome our resource person today, Professor Atula Kulatilaka. Professor Atula Kulatilaka graduated with first class honors in civil engineering from University of Moratuwa in 1991 and obtained a PhD, his PhD from Monash University, Australia in 1990. From 1991 to 2005, he was serving the Faculty of Engineering, University of Moratuwa as a senior lecturer and was promoted to a post of Professor of Civil Engineering in 2005. He is currently the president of Sri Lankan Geotechnical Society and also a member of ISSMG. Now, I humbly invite Professor Atula Kulatilikara to deliver the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
So if there's a problem, please let me know. Very good evening to all of you, dear ladies and gentlemen, and my colleagues. So over the next 1 hour, I will talk to you about the landslides, the geological background, how do they occur, and then how can we analyze a situation and predict the landslide, and then how the landslide can be monitored, potential sites can be monitored, and how the early warnings can be issued, and what are the engineering measures that we can rectify the situation and minimize the losses and the damage. A landslide is defined as the movement of a mass of rock, debris, or earth down a slope. So these movements, as we know, are generally inconvenient and could be of disastrous proportions, leading to loss of life in certain situations. And they are a source of concern for geotechnical engineers and engineering geologists. So we have to find solutions for that. These mass movements can be subdivided into 3 categories from a mechanistic point of view, for our analysis point of view. That is slides, flows, and falls. In a slide, the moving mass is coming down with a discrete boundary shear surface without any disaggregation inside. As one unit, it is coming down with less internal deformation, and it can be translationally as seen here. It can be translationally in one direction. Long infinite slopes may fail like this due to a heavy rainfall, or in the bridge, in the abutments of the reservoirs, due to drawdown of the water level. You can see this kind of shallow translational slides as you see here in Samanalawa reservoir, or it can be rotational, can be circular or compound surface, circular and uncircular components. So that's the way the landslides, there's a different forms of slides. Now the mechanism of slide can be illustrated with this simple example. It is very similar essentially to coming for a sliding of an object on a rough surface. So in this surface, when this weight, it has a downward movement. So there is potential movement along this surface. So there is a normal reaction, and as it attempts to move, there will be a shear resistance developing. So if the shear resistance is large enough to counter the downward movement, it will not come down. So that is essentially what is happening during a landslide. In the case of landslides taking place through rocks, in a rock, particles are strongly bonded. So movements can take place only through discontinuities like joints or fault planes or bedding planes. So if there are discontinuities in an adverse orientation like that, this block of rock can come down depending on the resistance that can develop there. In the case of a soil, particles are not strongly bonded, so they can move along any direction. Of course, there again, they will find weak lines, so particles are not very strongly bonded as in a rock. So if the frictional resistance that can be developed in between the particles is not sufficient to counteract the downward force, failures will happen. So these are some illustrations of rock slides. The block of rocks has come down like that. So there are two modes of rock slides in these two photographs. Coming to landslides, Butterwala landslide is one of the most famous landslides in Sri Lanka, which was stabilized around 1994, 93, 94. So this shows the landslide boundary identified by numerous investigations and the railway track there. So the railway track was getting disturbed by this slide. And this is the identified failure surface. So this mass was moving down due to the rise of the groundwater table during the rainy season. It has started around 1950s and year by year it has gone down directly without full disintegration, and this movement is causing the subsidence in the rail track and things are getting disturbed. So this was rectified in 1994. And I will talk about it later, but what I'm illustrating here is this is a slide. It is moving down, right, with the whole mass being intact. In the case of a flow, the material becomes disaggregated and the mass moves down without concentration of the displacement at the boundary. So one started as a slide can propagate and the whole mass can flow down as a debris flow. So that is what happens in Sri Lanka in most of these rain-induced landslides. In a fall, it is a toppling mechanism. It falls normally from the steep face of the soil or rock and immediate separation. So the debris is collected, can come down as a flow, right? So the type of the instability mechanism that could take place in a particular slide will depend on the ground topography, subsoil condition, groundwater condition, and rainfall. Small movements can be of one type. It may remain as a slide, flow, or fall. But in large movements, what started as a slide can end up as a flow. Falls, debris collected by a fall can come down as a flow. As I said already, in all the rain-induced large catastrophic landslides in Sri Lanka, it starts as a slide and ends as a flow. The analysis, as engineers, we have the responsibility of analyzing these situations, coming up with certain numbers. So there are two approaches that can be used in that situation to analyze the stability of a slide. We can do it deterministically by calculating a factor of safety. There are two approaches, limit equilibrium approach and the finite element approach. Limit equilibrium approach being the one most widely used. There we have to assume a potential failure surface. In the finite element approach, we don't have to make such an assumption. We do a stress analysis and come up with the factor of safety. I will elaborate it now. In the finite element analysis, we discretize the material into certain elements and assign the appropriate constitutive loads for the different soil strata there and simulate the construction. So it may be building up of a slope or excavation in the ground to make it a slope, or maybe in the case of a natural slope, you can do a gravity turn-on analysis. So with that, we calculate the deformations at the nodes and the stresses in the elements and we can graphically present that as stress contours or displacement vectors in this form. So this is a uniform soil. You can see these displacement vectors. The large value displacement vectors can be encompassed to be a circular shape, or we can get the stress levels at different vertical lines and find a path of larger stress level like this to get the shape of the failure surface. Also, there is another technique called the nodal displacement technique that was developed in late 1980s in Monash University. So there what we do, we calculate the displacement at a critical point, then keep on calculating that while reducing the strength and deformation parameters by a factor. So then you will see the displacement at that point increases gradually initially, and at what place it will start rapidly. So that point, the factor at that point where the deformation starts to increase rapidly can be treated as a factor of safety. If you check the displacements at that stage, displacement vectors corresponding to that stage, so you can get vectors like that. So then you see by encompassing the large values vectors, you can see that is the potential failure surface in this soil where there is a weak layer like that. So previously I showed a case of a uniform material. So here with that weak layer, the potential failure surface is not circular, it is of this type, wedge type surface. Now that understanding is important when you go to talk about the limit equilibrium approach. In a limit equilibrium approach, we have to assume a trial failure surface can be circular or non-circular based on the subsoil condition and consider the force and moment equilibrium. There are different methods available, Bishop's, Jambu's, and all that. In the Bishop's method, we can consider only the moment equilibrium, but the other two methods, other three methods, we can go for both moment and force equilibrium. And the Bishop's method, we can assume only a circular failure surface. In these, we can assume other forms of failure surfaces as well. Now, if we assume the failure surface to be circular in this situation, a circle can be defined by a center and a radius. So we can change the center along this grid and assign different radii, and the program will do the analysis and come up with the critical failure surface, in this case with the factor of safety 1.16 naught. But if we account for the geological situation and let the program analyze non-circular failure surfaces, the answer is 0.742. So this is the correct answer. So by not properly making that judgment and not directing the software to do the appropriate type of the potential failure surface, we can end up with the gross error in our final calculation. So it is very important to make that engineering judgment so that the software can play its role. In the other approach, the probabilistic approach, we account for the uncertainties in the parameters cohesion and friction and pore water pressure and vary them according to their standard deviation and consider different combinations and get a probability density function plotted. So using that, you can find the probability, the factor of safety is less than 1. So that is what we do in the probabilistic approach. Now coming to various ground situations that we encounter in Sri Lanka, our landmass consists of metamorphic and igneous crystalline rocks and their weathered products which lie in the position of the parent rock, the residual soil. Now in the process of the metamorphization, which happens due to changes in temperature and pressure, mineralogical structure of the rocks can vary abruptly and the situation is highly heterogeneous. So in a slope, Chanakatic rocks which have a high resistance to weathering can remain unweathered as you see here, while all the surrounding soil, surrounding rocks of other types have completely withered. And a particular, even more variable situation can be seen here. There are Chanakati crocks in here, and these gneiss crocks have withered into a lateritic type soil. Then the soils with high rocks with high feldspar content has withered and formed this whitish clay material, which is highly erodible and quite sensitive. So such highly variable situations can be seen in the in the sloping ground in Sri Lanka. Unfortunately, all these cannot be detected by few boreholes. So when the pop is exposed, only all these complicated situations are revealed. In these rocks, we can have joints, as seen here, a jointed rock with closely spaced joints. So this, when the rock withers and the weathered product remain at the same position, the rocks, these joints will remain as relic joints. So the presence of relic joints is also certain, can lead to critical situations in a residual soil. So as we discuss now, our land mass consists of colluvial soils. That is, if a residual soil has come down due to a previous landslide and deposited somewhere, we call it a colluvial soil, which is particularly weak material. Then the residual soils which are remaining intact at the position of the parent rock, then rocks of different levels of weathering. So that all sides of these combinations can be present in a slope. Now, in many situations, during the dry period, the groundwater table is low. Therefore, in the unsaturated soil, there are high matrix suctions. With the infiltration of rainwater, these matrix suctions are lost, and perhaps perch water table situation can develop, and it can make situation become unstable. I will elaborate it in few slides. So this is that general situation, the low groundwater table. In the unsaturated soil here, matrix suctions prevail, which enhances the stability. Below that, the pore water pressure is hydrostatic, and there are natural events, the precipitation, evapotranspiration, making changes in this pore pressure regime. Some practical examples. This is a steep vertical cut done in the Chandy Road at the Kegol bypass. So this is soon after the cut, far back in 2014, and it is looking very nice, not exposed to any rainfall. Soon after, with few rainfalls, so it has failed. So this is the failed position. Another location in the same road, this is the situation immediately after the cut. So it is nice and intact, but with few rainfalls, there is instability, and so that is the situation. So this is what happens in many slopes in Sri Lanka in certain situations of much disastrous proposition. Talking about the fundamentals of the unsaturated soils, in an unsaturated soil, in a saturated soil, you have only solids and water. In the unsaturated soil, there is air as well. So you have the solids, water in blue, the air, and the boundary of the two contractile skin. So this makes the things quite complicated. A water molecule at the edge of the boundary has an unbalanced force towards the water. So that will create a tensile pull in this contractile skin. Inside, the water phases are balanced. So this tensile pull makes a difference in the air and water pressure. Air pressure is generally greater than the water pressure. Air pressure is atmospheric. So the water pressure is less than that in negative. So in the soil mass, the spaces in between the particles can be considered as interconnected capillary tubes. So this surface tension effect has a the compressive force on the tube of the walls of the capillary tube. That means on the soil surfaces. So that compressive force generated by the surface tension, that capillary action, enhances the shear strength. As I said, the UW is negative, UA being 0. So we have this particular quantity being added to the shear strength. So if the soil becomes saturated, there is no contractile spin. This phenomenon is not present. So the pore water pressure, that pore water pressure is always causing a reduction in the shear strength. So when it is unsaturated, the prevailing metric suction makes the soil much stronger. To analyze this situation, there are two important characteristics of a soil, that is the soil water characteristic curve, how the metric suction will vary with the water content and how the permeability will vary with the water content. Now the soil water characteristics curve have two important points, point A, air entry value, and the residual water content, and this can be derived experimentally or empirically with various relationships. So we have done that for different types of soils in Sri Lanka, and the permeability, the variation of permeability with the metric suction can be found experimentally or can be related to the soil water characteristic curve. So when we model the seepage, the flow of water, infiltration of water into a soil, these two characteristics are very essential. Here I show you the some results of such monitoring. So this is a typical cut slope taken from typical southern expressway slopes, so this is the groundwater table. Over here, it can be either uniform soil or soil overlying layer of rock. So I have considered two these situations. So this is the case where, I mean, you saw the highly non-uniform conditions in these slopes, but we cannot analyze such a situation with all that complication. So we'll have to idealize. So this is idealized as a uniform slope. So that is the groundwater table, and infiltration into that is modeled. And in this case, there's a rock layer underneath that residual soil layer with a 5 millimeter per hour rainfall occurring over a few days. So that is the initial distribution, positive here, negative over that part. With the infiltration of rainfall over the first day, metric suction is lost up to that, second day like that, and so gradually it is getting lost like that. And the water moving down has caused a little increase rise in the groundwater table. Here in this, the lower section, that is the initial situation. And with the first day, it is lost, metric suction lost up to that, like that. And the groundwater table has a greater rise. So we can do this analysis and find how the pore pressure changes due to a particular rainfall in the full soil medium. With a much heavier intensity, rainfall of much heavier intensity with 20 millimeter per hour, you can see now that is the 0 line. So with the first day, right, it is not become just 0, it has come to a positive value. You can see as rainfall progresses, the positive pore pressures are developed here. So that is what we refer to as a perch water table, because with the downward moving water, the water table, main water table has increased slightly. But there is a perch water table created at the top, which is causing disturbance. At the lower section again, we can see a much greater change in the pore pressure regime. Day 1 here, day 2 like that, much greater rise in the groundwater table. In the case of the presence of rock underneath, the water will not penetrate into the rock. There will be pore pressure built up at the soil rock boundary, which will lead to formation of failure surfaces at that boundary. So with that, I illustrated how the pore pressure regime changes, how the metric suction is lost, and the perch water table conditions may develop during rainfall. So the shear strength is given by this particular equation. So with that, rainfall UA minus UW is reduced or lost, or positive pore pressures can be developed. So therefore, there is a reduction in tau F. The factor of safety will reduce therefore. So as time progresses, under different conditions, different intensities of rainfall, there is a reduction of the factor of safety. So that is what is illustrated there. In a slope made to a gradient 1 to 1, if you have made the slope flatter 1 to 1.267, still this infiltration causes the reduction of factor of safety. So lowering the slope angle is not the answer to this kind of situation. So these are the potential failure surfaces. And this is the practical situation that occurred in the Southern Expressway. This cut was made in the Golmatara segment, and due to a contractual problem, work was halted for about 4 years. So no drainage measures were implemented. There was water moving down the slope and infiltrating into it. And you can see some colluvial soils there, whitish clay soils over here. So this was going on in an uncontrolled manner for a few years. And as a result, it ended up like this. A catastrophic failure occurred. The slide that initiated has ended up as a flow. The debris has come to the road. And you can see here at some locations, everything up to the rock has moved down. There are many such failures happening in the country during the periods of heavy rain. So these are some of the landslides that took place in 2003, right? You can see that everything has moved down as a flow. You can the same situation here, right? Similar situations, this circular type failure surface, this whole mass has come down. And this is again another important point, interesting situation, a slide that took place due to mismanagement of drainage in Kandy, Rajapahilla Mawata. Hillwood College is down there. So the water, the surface of the road is cambered into this way for the water to flow along this, the rainwater flow. But at certain places, it is not properly maintained, and there is not enough capacity for drainage here. So the water flowed onto the other side of the slope. And the water flowing into that disturbed the soil and infiltrated into it and caused this failure. Right? So that's further later. So this is unstable. This debris has to be removed, and for the safety of the school, the slope had to be rectified with soil nailing, spending more than a few millions of rupees, which would have been avoided if proper attention had been paid to the drainage. In natural slopes also, all of us are aware that major failures are taking place during the periods of heavy rain. So this is corresponding to some such failures, the rainfall record, and the failure has taken place on this March day. So this is one such situation in Miriyabadde. So that is the initiated failure, right? So this is a famous failure causing many deaths, and that is where the slide started, initiation of slide. That is what we calculate using those mechanisms. What is the factor of safety, right? So that mass has come down. This is the flow part that is experienced, and that large mass has come down, causing much destruction here, burying people live here. So it is an indication that not only the initiation, the moving part of this debris flow is also an important consideration. So if we prevent initiation, nothing of that will happen, but we'll have to account for the potential flow part as well to make the complete analysis. So these are again some failures that have taken place in different parts. This is Kandy Mahayangana Road, right? The slide has ended up as a flow. So what do we do with the landslide? What are the possible actions? One thing, avoidance. So we have identified the suspected area. Don't go there, just leave it alone. So that is not possible always. The other possible sort of mode of action is acceptance, right? Live with the landslide. Get to know that there is a landslide and live with the landslide. I will elaborate it after this phase, correction. Coming to the correction phase, so it can, there are two aspects, two possibilities, the remediation or prevention. So if we find a slope is unstable, then we can rectify it. We can prevent the instability by various engineering measures. So if we find it before the potential failure, we can prevent the occurrence of a failure by appropriate drainage measures, or we can rectify it. We can rectify in the case of a failed slope. So that will need a certain, that is costing certain amount of money. In certain situations, we would be able to justify it. When we cannot justify it, we will have to accept the situation. We know that the failure is triggered by rainfall. So we monitor the slope, rainfall and other effects of rainfall can be monitored. And when we realize that the rainfall and the other indications say that it is likely to fail, we can get the people out of the area and minimize the damage. So accept the landslide, do the necessary monitoring and issue efficient warnings to minimize the disaster. So that is what we say as acceptance or living with landslide. If we can rectify each and every landslide, that is the best situation. But when it is not feasible practically, we'll have to live with that situation. NBRO is the government agency dealing with landslides in Sri Lanka. So they have various strategies in the landslide risk management. I work very closely with NBRO in many of these activities. The first activity is the identification of hazards, the zonation map, landslide susceptibility map. I will elaborate it in a little while. Then they are involved with landslide monitoring, early warning, and awareness campaigns. And in major projects, landslide risk assessments are done. And then there are investigations and analysis for mitigation in special projects. Talking about the landslide hazard zonation mapping. So in that we talk about the possible reasons contributing to the landslide, like the bedrock condition, bedrock geology, the soil cover, the thickness of the soil cover, type of the soils there, the slope range, slope angles, hydrology, and the land use in that particular location, and the land forms. So there are these different contributory factors, and they were given different weightages based on the expert knowledge and various statistical principles, and combined to form a hazard zonation map. So the maps were initially developed at scales of 1:50,000 for starting with the district like Nuwara Eliya, Badulla, Kandy. Now for most of the districts in Sri Lanka, these maps are available, and they were converted to 1:10,000 maps with further data. So this is a particular hazard zonation map. Different hazard levels are marked in different colors. And if I take this particular one for the Aranayaka area, famous Aranayaka landslide, so this is the identified the risk, the high potential land zone with high susceptibility to the landslide. So that is already identified. And this is the marked flow path of the debris. So that is the risk area under risk. Earlier with the Meria landslide, I showed you that path. So this is the path under danger. So from the hazard susceptibility maps, the risk maps are to be developed, identifying those areas under risk, and that is currently being done. Then the monitoring. For the monitoring of the landslides, the real-time forecasting is an important aspect. So for that, rainfall is the main triggering factor. So there are now 325 automated rain gauge stations stationed in many of the critical parts of the country. So the rainfall records are coming automatically to NBRO and then shared with Disaster Management Center, right? And based on the rainfall, various on the identified susceptible zones, alerts are issued. Initially, alert at 75 it is rainfall intensity is 75 millimeters per day, warnings at 100, and evacuation was recommended with 75 millimeter per hour or 100 millimeter per day values. So these numbers were arrived at based on the past experience and various statistical the information. As we discussed earlier on, we can understand that this threshold rainfall value for a slide in a particular location is site specific. We have to do a detailed analysis of the site and find out what is the threshold rainfall value. So, but such an analysis cannot be done for each and every suspected slope. So there is a general guidance, but, but we can do it more detailed in the case of identified critical slopes. Now we are going to start a research project to do that, to get the threshold rainfall values in certain identified regions and to predict the flow path as well. Now, in addition to the rainfall, it is necessary to monitor the other parameters, the effect the rainfall has on the ground. With the infiltration of the rainfall, I showed there that the moisture, there is water getting into that soil, moisture content changes, there is a loss of matrix suction, and the pore pressure is developing, and there are certain movements acting at the ground surface level and at the deeper level. So all these can be done with various instrumentation. So in a identified potentially hazardous site, you can identify the different soil layers where it is problematic, where the situation is critical, and install these different instruments at appropriate locations. I will elaborate it with some figures here. To measure the temperature change of moisture content, you have the moisture sensors. Then to measure the pore pressure, the matrix suction change, tensometers, piezometers, and to measure the ground movement, we can have extensometers and tilt sensors and strain gauges. In all these, the data can be acquired electronically and transferred to a control station without visiting the site. So you can monitor the slope from the office if proper instrumentation is installed. Then there are inclinometers which are capable of identifying the failure surface at a depth, deeper level. I will elaborate that as well. So these are some examples of moisture sensors that we can install at different locations in a slope. And this is the groundwater level. Just the groundwater level can be measured with a borehole done in and lowering the probe to get the water level. But that is not the most important way of doing it. Most appropriate way is through a piezometer, right? So in our residual soil formations, there are soil layers of contrasting permeability. So the pore pressure development and dissipation in these layers will be very different to each other. So it is necessary to identify the pore pressure at different layers. So we need to install in a critical site pore pressure piezometers at different levels. Piezometers can be of different categories. The simplest thing is the standpipe or Casagrande type piezometer. where you have a porous tip or a perforated tip, and with the rise of the water table, the water will rise along that to balance the pore pressure at the toe, at the tip, and so you have to measure the water level through a probe that is pushed down. So there is some time needed for water to move into that. So therefore, the response is slow. There are other devices like the pneumatic piezometer. The response is much faster. So there is a porous stone and a diaphragm, and when you want to measure the pore water pressure, nitrogen or air is entered at a certain pressure, so that will open up the diaphragm and it comes back, and you can record the pore pressure. So there is no need of movement of water, so you can get the pore pressure measured rapidly. In an electric piezometer, you have a filter here, the porous stone, and that is connected to the pore water regime, and the water pressure will have an impact on the diaphragm. That will have an impact on the length of this wire. The measurement of its resistance can be converted to a pore water pressure. In a vibrating wire piezometer, again, there is a filter and a diaphragm. So this is in contact with the pore pressure regime. The water pressure measured there have an impact in the diaphragm, and it changes the length of the wire and its resonance frequency. So it is picked up by a signal and converted to the pore pressure. So all these will react very fast and ideal to monitor the pore pressure building up and dissipation in a landslide situation. So in a borehole, with different soil layer identified, you do a site investigation, identify different soil strata that can be critical, so the piezometers can be installed at different depths. The other point that we were talking about is the metric suction. So the metric suction is measured with tensometers, so that negative pore pressure can be measured directly, or you can measure the some other parameters related to it. So when we measure the metric suction directly, we call it the tensometer, and conventionally we can measure up to about 100 kilopascals metric suction directly. And in a tensometer, we have a porous tip, right? High air entry disk, and that will get in contact with the soil with that negative pore pressure. So that soil tension will have an impact on the diaphragm, and that effect is measured by the devices here. So there are devices of different content here. The reservoir is small, and this is the tensometer that we use in our research work. There's a large water reservoir. In all these situations, it is very important that you prevent both air entering that. In the unsaturated soil, there is air. Entrance of air should be prevented. So you have to have a high air entry test. If you expect 200 kilopascal metric suction in a soil, you need to have a disk with air entry value greater than 200, so air cannot enter. If air enters the reservoir, it disturbs the whole procedure. So these are some further details of tensometers and how you do a borehole and insert the tensometer to monitor that pore pressure. Coming into the measurement of other parameters, so this is the Badul-Sirigama landslide again, to measure the effect of pore pressure rise. Now this pore pressure rise due to infiltration starts the movement, so you can monitor the movements. To monitor the movements, we can use extensometer. So this is an extensometer. One end of the device should be in the firmed area, other end in the landslide area. So with the surface features, one has to deduce the potential failure surface. Things like tension cracks, deformations to houses, and the other soil can help you with that context. You identify the potential slide boundary. You confirm it through this information, right? So you have the tensometer going across safe area to the slide area, and you can have other the inclinometers over there, which I'll come to later, right? So then this is the details of the device. So the extensometer is a long wire protected by a tube here, and with the movements happening along the across the boundary, there will be changes in the length of the wire, which is predicted, which is picked up by this instrumentation. So you can see whether there is a movement. A tilt sensor is a smaller device, a simpler device used for this purpose. And so you can see this instrument. So that is installed at a shallow depth. It is capable of measuring the tilt in the surface and the progressive deformation. And the data can be transmitted electronically, and volumetric water content measurements are also generally installed in here. You can see the installation. So the tilt or the deformation and the water content change can be transmitted electronically to the control station. So this is a certain result. With this heavy rainfall indicated by that, in a tilt extensometer, large movement has been initiated. In a tilt sensor, the large movement has got initiated due to this rainfall. So when we have these instruments located at appropriate positions, along with the measurement of rainfall, we can connect them up and see whether the movements have initiated or whether there is a danger of a slide. Inclinometer is used to find the depth of the failure surface, identify that. So using series of tubes, you have to connect this borehole to a sufficient depth. Now this shows a potential failure surface, which is to be verified by installation of these inclinometer tubes going below that. And then you can see there are the tilt sensors and extensometers also installed. So after installing this tube, the deformation happening in it can be measured by a probe. So this is the situation in that inclinometer is shown here. You can see at a particular depth, there is the deformation increasing day by day. At this inclinometer, it is happening at a different depth. So when the inclinometer extends beyond the potential failure surface, depth of the failure surface can be identified. So this is the probe, and that is the inclinometer tube with two axes of movement. So this person in the lowering that into the inclinometer tube with the borehole and identifying it. The change of angle can be identified and transmitted, get to the top electronically, and you can identify how the changes are happening. Yeah, the deviation from verticality can be identified. So these are again further illustrations of inclinometer readings in different sloping situations. In this particular situation, these kinks can be identified at 4 different levels. So movements are happening in 4 different levels. And with strain gauges installed at different depths, you can identify the ground deformation. And these are some illustrations of instrumentation, again at the Baddeley Sirigama slide. So these are the extensometers at the slide boundary, and the inclinometers were set along that, and these are tilt sensors. And with this critical rainfall, where the accumulated rainfall is plotted by that, you can see in the extensometer the large deformations identified in the extensometer. And in the inclinometer, with this rainfall, you can identify that deformation happening, right? And in the strain gauges, you can see with that rainfall, right, the accumulated rainfall, the deformation. It is straight here, but the deformation is started after the rainfall. So that is site-specific monitoring with installed instrumentation. There is a global way of doing that using the satellite data, interferometric synthetic aperture radar, INSA technique had been used to identify the global variation of the deformation. So by taking images taken at, using the images taken at different time intervals, a three-dimensional terrain model can be generated and the slope movements in the order of millimeter can be captured. So this is the data acquired over the first day, the second day. So there's a phase difference here. Using that, the deformation can be identified. This is a typical result in this area through the INSA satellite information. The yearly deformation movement rates are identified. So the importance of this is once such a situation is identified in a large area, we can find where the large displacements are happening. So we can focus our site-specific instrumentation in that area. Aerial photogrammetry is another tool that can be used here. In aerial photogrammetry, we take photographs with more than 60% overlap. Two overlapping photographs can be used to create the three-dimensional model of that area. Nowadays, we have these drones taking digital photographs and combining these overlapping photographs in an analytical photogrammetry exercise with various software. You can create the three-dimensional ground model. So the three-dimensional ground model can be developed at periodic time intervals, and you can see what are the changes happening in between. Terrestrial photogrammetry, where the photographs are taken with the horizontal axis. In a sloping ground, you can take photographs with the horizontal axis of the camera overlapping and create the three-dimensional ground model and do that periodically to find out any deformations within a certain time period. So that technique is used in structural engineering. So this is a thin element loaded here, and it is watched by two cameras. Using this, you can create a three-dimensional model of the deformation of that element. So without fixing strain gauges, which will influence the behavior, you can watch it with the two cameras. Three-dimensional model can be created of the deforming object, and necessary analysis can be done. Right, that's about the monitoring. And so if we find the landslide is taking place, so what can we do? How can we rectify? Tersaghi says in that we have to attack the actual cause of the slide. So it can be done by modification of the slope geometry, drainage, retaining structures, and internal slope reinforcement. In the modification of geometry, we may remove the material from the sliding area and add it to the toe or change the slope geometry. But in our situations, mostly these landslides are caused by the rainfall. So therefore, the focus should be on reducing infiltration and getting the pore water out. So we have to focus on improving the surface drainage and subsurface drainage. Surface drainage can be improved by cut-off drains, berm drains. At shallow levels, we can use trench drains, or infiltration with the relic joints must be minimized, and subsurface drainage may be required in certain situations. Taking examples from the Southern Expressway, when it was cut steep to construct the road here, there was a cut-off drain constructed, intercepting all the water coming here and taken down. And here again in this multi-berm slope, berm drain there, here a large berm drain, and will be connected to this cascade drain, intercepting all the water coming from the top without letting it into this steeper more vulnerable part of the slope. Here again, an illustration of berm drain connecting to a cascade drain taking down. This is to prevent splashing of water into the rock. This is another critical location in the Southern Expressway. So there are these berm drains. There's a lot of water coming from further up the slope, right? So there are these cascade drains coming up. So here the work is not complete. So when we visited the site during a rainfall, with the work at that stage, we see this kind of flow taking place. So if this happens in an uncontrolled manner over several months or years, that will become unstable. So this shows the completion of all the drains and the protection there. So currently that is taken under control. So this surface drainage will have to improvise in certain situations. There may be situations, this is one such case, a boulder terrain. We cannot make an excavation that will trigger movement of boulders. So a drain is done like that. So this is another situation. In this excavation, there were unstable, highly jointed rock. So the unstable rock pieces were brought down. Then there was some soil retaining there, and doing a drain, cutting and making a drain will be quite critical. So there was this road which was concrete road. The concrete L-shaped drain was connected to the road so that the water coming onto this slope is prevented. So we'll have to improvise like that in different situations. So the road, the slope surface should be protected by having vegetation in there, or this kind of when the vegetation cannot be grown due to the nature of the less weathered nature of the material, you may have to go for artificial surfacing like that. The vegetation has many positive influences on the slope, like intercepting the rainfall and then binding the material, binding the soil at shallow depths with the roots, and evaporation causing matrix suction, right, and so forth. So I have listed all of these here. Without going through all of them, I will summarize the effect of vegetation. It will prevent the surface erosion, enhances the cohesion at shallow level. Deep roots will act as kind of a nailing reinforcement. So that will in all cause a positive effect. So the vegetation can be introduced by turfing or hydroseeding. So these are some such exercises. Hydroseeding, and this net protects it till the seeds are grown. Turfing, right? When the level of weathering is quite high, turfing may be successful. This is again hydroseeding, right? Hydroseeded, and that is covered with the straw mat, and they are doing the watering, and little by little the plants are grown. So now you don't need the straw mat. It is capable of providing the erosion protection. So in many cases, the surface drainage may not be sufficient. We will have to go for subsurface drainage measures. We may have trench drains like that, and these kind of sub-horizontal drains, pumping wells, right? Sub-horizontal drains drilled into a particular distance with perforated pipes. Water in here is captured by that and find a easy path. So we'll have to install them at regular horizontal intervals. Sometimes we may have to do things like drainage well and then drill in different directions and install wells as here, right? So depending on the prevailing situation, we have to find the appropriate way of installing the drainage. In the Vattavara landslide, which was stabilized completely by drainage measures, there was surface drainage measures, pumping wells, and in the long term, directional drain under the identified potential failure surface. So these are the surface drains, pumping wells. These are photographs taken somewhere back in 1995. And then, more importantly, this is the identified failure surface, which I showed you earlier. During the dry season, that is the groundwater table level, which will rise up to that due to the rainfall. So then movements will initiate along that. So the movements there has happened over a long period. The shear strength has come down to residual. So that is the potential moving line. So that is the one which has to be protected. Therefore, the subsurface drains were taken just underneath that. Now that is too long. That is about 35-meter deep. So you can't have one directional drain. You have to handle the failure surface. So the directional draining technique was used. Subsurface drains were taken along that path, and to cover the planned area, there were 13 such drains done, and in those drains, HDPE piles, which have high resistance to deformation, were inserted. There is these perforations from region to region, allowing the water to come in. And so this is the drilling technique used. And so that is the outlet of the drain. Photographs taken in 1995, soon after the completion. And this is the situation of photographs I took in 2012. So they are still in operation. There are some complaints of blockage, but yeah, it is still in operation. There are, of course, some issues to be answered. This is one of the pumping wells and the railway track. In the Badalasirigama landslide, which is again rectified by drainage measures alone. So this is the identified surface that I showed you before. Through investigations, 3 potential failure surfaces were identified: the lower one, middle one, and the upper one. So, and also they can be combined to make one composite failure surface. And so, so these are the drainage measures implemented. Blue lines are the surface drains, and then at different elevations, fan type drains were done. From one location, drains were done for about 40-50 meters in a fan type orientation. And the water is collected, then taken away. Now, this is the measure of the surface drainage. And these are subsurface drains. So number of the water collected from those fan type subsurface drains were collected and taken away. Now this was modeled, the master's work by Nilanka's thesis, and these were the different levels where these things were installed, and it was idealized into a 2D situation, and the installation of these drains and the drainage of water away from those drains was modeled. And now in here, there were no other activity, only the installation of drains, so no cutting or filling activity. So they could have been installed starting from the bottom going up, or starting from the top going down. So we investigated 2 possibilities. If we do a top-down construction, the factor of safety of the 3 identified failure surfaces, in the top-down, the top one enhances first, and the bottom one enhances very late. So if you do a bottom matrix one in the bottom failure surface, that is the lower one, the factor of safety is gained very fast. In the upper one, it will be happening much slower. If you consider the composite failure surface, the top down will bring it to that value. The bottom up, that is the top down situation. Bottom up situation brings it there, right, to the same value. But in the bottom up situation, you can see the factor of safety gain is faster. If you start installing drains from bottom up, the factor of safety is gained faster. Then after that, we impose a critical design rainfall on this rectified slope and check what will happen. So that is the rainfall record. You can see with this rainfall, there is a drop in the factor of safety in all 3 potential failure surfaces. but with the cessation of the rainfall, factor of safety is gained fast. So it has not led to a value less than 1. With the composite failure surface, again that was checked. So this is after the installation of drains. When the drains are working, factor of safety is picking up, and with the rainfall, there is a drop, and it is picking up again with the cessation of the rainfall. So you'll have to do this kind of analysis to see whether a rectified slope is capable of handling this failure. So in here we have done some monitoring even after that, and this indicates that with these critical rainfalls, the movements in the extensometers were not recorded. That means it is working. In certain situations, in addition to the drainage measures, we will have to have various kinds of structural interventions, like this steep cut slope. It is necessary to have this gabion wall here to protect it, in addition to the drainage measures. Now, in this situation, in the Colombo-Kattunayake Expressway, this steep cut is done, which is very stable during this dry season, highly hard lateritic soil, but you cannot guarantee the safety during the periods of heavy rain. So the excavation is done segment by segment, and this mass concrete retaining wall was constructed. In this school in Kandy, the slope has shown some signs of instability. To protect it, in addition to the surface drainage measures, we use a back-battered random rubble masonry wall. So that is a geotextile, the drainage layer, and the wall with weep holes. The back-battered retaining wall is the most optimum orientation, most optimum shape for a rectification of a slope. The other possibility is reinforcement by soil nailing type interventions. Now, this shows the drilling, insertion of the reinforcement, and grouting. So they are installed in grouted holes with a centralizer to ensure there is sufficient grout cover right now. They are not tension, they are passive elements. With the movements, initiation of the movements in the ground, with the initiation of the movement in the ground, this reinforcement will get tension. A certain tensile load will generate there. So that will, in the factor of safety equation, it has a positive contribution to the normal stress and a minus component here, reducing the TOM, right? So both these effects will increase the factor of safety. So the critical factors are the tensile strength of the reinforcement and the pull-out resistance. So the diameter of the hole, the length of the hole is important to see how long, how much it will extend beyond the potential failures. In a soil nailing design, we decide on the length and the spacing. So this is one nail spacing required to make it stable. So these are different forms of nailing situations that you see. And so this is the construction sequence of a nailing, showing the drilling of the hole, inserting of the reinforcements, grouting starting from the bottom, and connecting them up, and shotcreting, and at the end of it. So there were many slope rectifications with soil nailing in the Southern Expressway, right? So this is one such situation, and there's a valley here. There's a lot of water coming into that valley. So nailing alone will not be enough. There is a basin drain constructed here to collect all that water, and that was sent down through a cascade drain to ensure stability. And certain recent constructions, we did not use the full face shotcreting. In here, nail heads were connected by these beams and also connected with this high tensile mesh, and vegetation was introduced by hydroseeding technique. So there is a cutoff drain at the top. So in this area, there was rock, highly fractured rock, and the vegetation will not grow, so we had to use shotcreting there. This is another stabilization in Kandy Mahamaya College. The nails were connected by the beams. In between, vegetation was introduced, so it looks like a natural slope. In many such slopes stabilized on the Kandy Mahayangana Road, we use that type of situation things with the nail heads connected by high tensile strength mesh and introduce the vegetation wherever possible. But there were certain situations with highly erodible material where we have to go for the shotcreting. In here, the nail heads are connected by this metallic plate along with high tensile strength wire. So these are some of that. Then talking about this failure in the Southern Expressway, you can see this crack appearing in the morning and causing destructions in the drainage lines. And by the evening, failure has taken place. This is due to a faulty drain here. It was leaking into that. And you can see the failure surface is not very deep. Whitish clay soils are seen here, and it is quite dry. So the water table has not risen. This is due to development, loss of matrix suction, and possible development of perch water table near the surface. And the prevailing situation is not stable, which was rectified by reinforcing toe retaining structure. Now these at the top level, much longer reinforcements were used, required. So we used anchoring here and nailing here. In an anchor, there is pre-stressing. In a soil nailing, the nail is a passive element, but in anchoring, you need pre-stressing. So this is that configuration. And these are the subsurface drains used to get the water out, the Gabion wort at the bottom. Drilling and installation of the shotcreting and the pre-tensioning of anchors at the upper level from that platform. And in the drilling process, we encounter boardinate structures, rocks, but we have to drill through that to the design length. Otherwise, it is not capable of getting that particular strength. So we identified there are relic joints in that orientation because when the drilling was done, water is gushing out. You can see that person covered in mud. And during the grouting, when the grouting was done on a particular nail, it is coming out at the other ungrouted holes. So that is a proof that there is an interconnected relic gain pattern in there. So in the construction sequence, we'll have to plan it properly. So those subsurface drains were done at the last. If they were done at initially, they will get filled with grout. So after completing all the grouting only, those drains were done. The water infiltration into the relic joints was modeled like that. And with the back analysis, we found that if the drainage measures are not working, and if there is infiltration into this through the relic joints, the factor of safety can go down to value less than 1. This is before implementation of the remedial measures. So this is after that. In another slope rectification project in Ginigathena, where the road has to be widened. So when they started to widen it, which initiated this failure, so at that point, NBRO has to intervene in and stabilize the situation, right? So this is the initiated landslide, that is reactivation of a previous landslide. At the upper level, there is a waterlogged area. That water level has to be drawn down, and the rectification has to be done from top down. This is the contours of the area and identified subsoil layers. So, and when we evaluate the factor of safety in the current situation, less than 1, potentially unstable, and the rectification measures includes nailing and drainage, coming into that. So that is the current profile. For the widening of the road, we had to excavate it down to that distance. So it has to be done from top down. If you start at the bottom, you will initiate failures first. Start from the top, surface drainage was attended, then that nailing was done, this subsurface drainage was done and propagated down. And so these are the surface drainage measures taken at the top with this trench drain, culvert drain, and intercepting water level up to that. And these were the tubes inserted into these subsurface drains. And so that is the stage 1 construction, stage 2, stage 3. The factor of safety was evaluated stage by stage, and with the implementation of these drainage measures, there was sufficient safety margins in all situations. Now, then we applied a potential rainfall on this rectified slope to see what will happen. So this is the rainfall applied. So with the full implementation, this rainfall did not cause a reduction in the factor of safety. But if we do not have soil nails, no nailing, right? So that will be the situation. If there is no drainage or no nailing, that will be the situation. It is unstable under this slope. So once we implement the drainage measures, the effect on a potential critical rainfall need to be analyzed. And we check the effect of drainage. So this is if there is no drainage at all in the slope, so the factor of safety of the applied the situation will be just 1 if we have to have more nails to make it stable. But with high groundwater table, having nailing will be very difficult. So if you have only the surface drains but not subsurface drains, right? So that is the situation. Again, you need more nails to stabilize it without drainage measures. So this is to illustrate that in a soil nailing exercise, drainage must be there. Otherwise, you cannot implement that or you cannot economize it. So this is the final situation of the slope. Then I will take 2 last cases from Hong Kong. This one, there is this major instability in 1972, which they rectified by drainage measures, surface and subsurface drainage. So there had been continuous monitoring of this to see that about 10 years back, there were some shallow level movements. So this area is highly developed. So therefore, getting back and doing this drainage alone is not practically viable. So this is the solution that they adopted. At the ground level, bottom level, they did 2 tunnels through rock. From those tunnels, they drilled up these subvertical drains. So the water in that could be drained out through these subvertical drains. So if they just did that, all the water here will be draining out and it will be another Umayyad situation. But so they didn't do that. They had a control. We had a control. So from these are the 2 tunnels, subsurface drains, the subvertical drains done there, right? So they have installed piezometers here, and so these drains will open up only when the pore water pressure exceeds below a certain value. If the water table is high, it may affect the stability. If all the water is drained out, it will jeopardize the whole ecology of the area. So they have the control and allowing the water to come out, water to drain out only when the pore water pressure rises below a certain value. So the ground area is maintained. So everything was done with minimum disturbance to that developed area. This is a very pioneering exercise of drainage. Then this last situation, use of subsurface use of capillary barriers. If you have a capillary barrier made of a fine grain layer and a coarse grain layer underneath, with proper contrasting soil water characteristic curves and the permeabilities, the water will move through the fine layer only. At high metric suctions, the permeability of the coarse grain layer is much lower. So if you have them with proper thickness, proper slope, you can maintain the flow in the fine grain layer at the top and collect it at the bottom, minimizing what is coming down to the critical slope. So this is an illustration. This I got from Professor Rahajo in 2019 when I met him at the international conference. So in the steep slope, the material is placed within jaw cells, coarse grain layer, right? So this is there is a geotextile layer in between, and the fine grain layer is put there. And after that, topsoil was done, and it is turfed. So with a particular rainfall, when there is no such capillary barrier, the pore water pressures, now that is the metric suction, the negative region, pore pressures were getting positive like that. With the installation of that capillary barrier, with this design rainfall, negative pore pressures were maintained. And so this is another illustration with this particular rainfall, how the factor of safety was maintained. And we have embarked a study on this at Moratuwa. We have a physical model of a capillary barrier, residual soil, the coarse grain layer, the manufactured sand coarse material, and fine grain sand. And it is instrumented with moisture sensors in the two layers because the thickness is very small, and there is tensometers at the layer of the residual soil. So we impose artificial rainfall on that and measured the variation of the metric suction and the moisture content. So I have just summarized the metric suction measurements in the residual soil. With this design rainfall, the metric suctions did not change much because of the capillary barrier. When it is numerically analyzed, we can see these flow vectors. All the flow is taking place sufficient thickness, and very little has come to the coarse layer. And a numerical analysis was done about the use of a capillary barrier in a multi-cut slope. So if there were no capillary barriers, with these referral rainfall intensities, the factor of safety of this slope will come down like that. Take the red one, which is corresponding to a 20 millimeter per hour rainfall without capillary barrier. With the capillary barrier, with that interception of the rainfall, the factor of safety variation is given by that line to maintain a high factor of safety at the end of the rainfall. So capillary barriers are successful. So we have to find practical ways of installing it. This is only an initial exercise. We have not been able to do a field exercise on that. Then in conclusion, I would say natural slopes are stable in the unsaturated state, but with the rainwater infiltration, there will be many instabilities. So we can model the rainfall and assess the situation. So slopes should be cut to appropriate angles, and appropriate surface drainage measures should be installed to and subsurface drainage measures should be installed to stabilize them. And certain situations, additional structural measures in the form of gravity walls, soil nailing, and anchoring may be required. Now, these measures applied in combination, you saw that soil nailing together with the draining will provide the most optimal situation. And in installation of this, in implementation of that, correct construction sequence must be adopted. And whatever the construction that we have done should be monitored and maintained. You saw that for Hong Kong situation, they have been continuously monitoring that and detected the fault and rectified it without leading it to a catastrophic failure. So we are very weak on that aspect. So we have to monitor whatever the implement the measures of rectification and ensure that they are operational. So that is, we have to build and watch, but not to forget after building it. Right. Thank you. So that concludes the presentation. It has taken a little bit longer than 1 hour. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, sir. If you have any question, now you can post them in the chat box. So there is one question.
Yeah, I can't see.
Hmm, the chat box, no, is asking normally, as we know that coarse layers are more permeable, but is capillary B fine layer was seen more permeable. How come?
So that is what we see normally, but at high metric suctions, the permeability of the coarse layer is much lower, as indicated by that there could be the permeability curve. I mean, normally we talk about the saturated situation. In the saturated situation, the permeability of the coarse layer is much greater. That I agree.
So they are asking for the presentation, whether you can share it or not.
Mm. Now you ISL, you are recording it now,
Yes, sir, yes.
so you can share the recorded presentation.
The previous question, adding to the previous question, he's asking Asanka Kumar Siri that mean this happened in
Right.
perch water table. So can you see the question?
No, I can't. No. Yeah. How can I see?
There is
So normally
a
there is
chat.
this.
There is chat box.
I can't see the chat box here in this line.
His question is that mean this happened in perch water table like C2 about the set zone.
No, that is not. Now it is not happening in a perch water table situation. Perch water table is with lot of infiltration going into the soil. Yeah, so that is not related to the perch water table situation. Yeah, now I got it now. Currently, can you slow? So, 1 to 3, 1 is to 3. So I use deep geodes to correct the type of grass. Yes, with geogrids, your textiles, you can maybe your composite type situation, you can introduce grass to a steeper slope. Yes. Um, yes, that is possible. That is possible. But you'll have to check the overall stability of the slope with that geometry.
So it seems like there is no other questions. Can we move on to the next? There is a question.
Yes. What is the question? In soil nailing is anchoring to hard rock, or how decide anchoring? In soil nailing, I mean, in software you can analyze it. So we have to find what is the length of the soil nailing required to achieve the desired safety margin. So it is, yeah. So now here, how can we decide soil nailing length? So that is by trial and error. You see, we in the limit equilibrium approach, we analyze trial failure surfaces. So we have to try with different nailing lengths till you get a adequate safety margin. Usually, the horizontal spacing of the nail is in the order of 1.5 to 2 meters. Vertical is also in that range, maybe 2 meters. The critical thing is the nailing length of the nail. And so we'll have to try out different patterns till we achieve a sufficient safety margin. in stabilizing a cutting, what is the proper angle we should follow? Cannot generalize, but generally about 1 vertical to 1.2 horizontal, or 1 vertical to 1 horizontal, generally manageable, but we'll have to do an analysis based on the soil situation. If it is very hard rock, maybe 1 to 4, 1 vertical, 4 vertical to 1 horizontal even is fine in the case of a hard rock. So it depends on the soil. Generally, less than 45 degrees is better, but you have to analyze. Is there any specific angle for soil layers? Generally, they are downward at about 10 degrees from the horizontal.
You missed the one question relevant to social issues. Who will be authorized to take legal action in case some parties disturb landslide prone area? Share your experience.
Yeah, so if I don't know of any legal case like that, but NBRO doesn't have the legal authority. I mean, like these cases that happen in Candida, that the failure of that house and so forth. So the normal that can happen again the normal legal framework of the country, and the experts can give the evidence to bring that to a conclusion. So that should be through the normal framework of law in the country. Rather than the extensometer, can we use GPS to measure the ground movements and other limitations? Then not completely replacing that. With the GPS, we can get a surface level movement. With the extensometers, we specifically install it one side in the sliding area, other side in the normal, the stable ground, so we can get more details about the movement. Like GPS, we can do a global monitoring as we do with satellites or the aerial photographs. We get a global thing, but extensometer provides more detailed information. You can't replace that. It seems soil nailing and other methods are really expensive. Any comments? Ideally speaking, when you look at the case records coming from other countries, soil nailing is a very low cost option, very cost effective option. In Sri Lanka, the costs are high because I believe that is a contractual issue. If there are more people engaged in that and good competition, the cost can come down.
So we are going to wind up with this question. What is the issue with the Teldenia area recently? Had some shakes. Is due to mass movement or other reason?
That of course I don't know. I'm not aware of the situation. I don't know. I can't answer that.
So I think now we can share the video you have already prepared.
Right. Okay. Okay. So then I think I wish to share a song with you. Now here we talked about the rain-induced landslides, the water which is the most important commodity in for life. Now, how can I get to the video? Right. Now, there we talked about the rain-induced slow failures and how they were rectified. Water, which is an essential commodity for all forms of life, human, animals, or plant, has become destructive when available in large quantities in an uncontrolled manner. So in this, I talked about that. And this is true for many other phenomena. or certain human behavior, characters that can be very helpful when available in correct quantity, correct magnitude, can be very destructive when it is present excessively in an uncontrolled manner. So I put these thoughts and make this song. My daughter Kalani is singing it. Dr. Rohan Avira Singh composed the music, and our graduate from University of Maratua, Milinda Amara Singh, did the pictures. I hope you can. I wish to share this with you, so I hope you will enjoy that. Okay, let's go to that. So I will conclude the presentation with that. Sanjay, it is okay now. Now you can see now.
Yes, sir, we can.
Right. So I will play it. So if there is a problem, please let me know. Thank you. Thank you. So that concludes it.
Okay, thank you, sir. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Professor Atula Kulatileka for sharing his valuable time explaining the much needed topic. Further, on behalf of the Civil Engineering Sectional Committee, we are always grateful for our membership Your participation is always encourage us. Thank you.